Welcome to Lewis Spotlight. My name is Hayley Miller. I'm an assistant professor in the communications department, and I'd like to share some life lessons with you today. I grew up in Plainfield in like the early to mid 1980s. It actually was a small town at the time. The biggest thing that ever happened there was the 1990 tornado, and that actually was huge at the time. So now there's 5 high schools and countless middle schools and grade schools, but it was kind of a small town life, just the friends you had in your neighborhood and the friends you had at school, and if you wanted to get together with them, you had to call their landline at home and have your mom drive you over there. So fairly simple, sports and after school activities, nothing too exciting. I have 2 siblings, an older brother and a younger sister. Growing up in the same house, we had some fighting, some disagreements. I was really a lot like my brother, which drove him crazy, and I didn't have anything in common with my sister, which drove me crazy because she never wanted to do anything I wanted to do, and I never wanted to do anything she wanted to do, so it made it tough to find things for us to do in common. But the things we did do together, were very strange, that only she and I found funny or entertaining at all. But yeah, I mean, we all get along great now. It was just, average middle child growing up. Life lessons I learned from my parents would be to work hard, strive for what you want, that you shouldn't settle. I know all of those sound like cliches, but my dad, his kind of token phrase with my siblings and I growing up was to look it up. And by that he meant we would go to him and we would ask him a question, whether it was, can you explain how you do this question on a homework, or can you tell me how to spell something? Where is this country located? And he would say, look it up. And it wasn't because he wasn't being unhelpful, it's because he wanted us to learn how to be resourceful. And we just were being lazy. There's a dictionary, go figure it out. And if it was a really hard word, he'd give us the first couple letters and then go from there. Or, if we were looking at an atlas or something, he would say, okay, well, it's somewhere in Asia. And then that way could help narrow it down. But he never just gave us the answer, because that doesn't teach you how to do anything. It just gives you the answer. So that was one big lesson I learned from them. My most difficult life lesson so far is probably acceptance, that you can't do everything. You can't, there's not enough time in the day, so there are some things that have to be put on the back burner, things that have to get put off until next week or next month. Things that you really want to accomplish might not come in, like, for example, as a teacher, if I got an idea for a lesson plan or an idea for an assignment, I might have to just bite my tongue because it's too far into the semester, and I'm going to have to wait until I get to teach the class again and then try that lesson plan, because it would throw off everything else. Accepting that when you have great ideas, sometimes they just fail, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't try it again a different way. It just doesn't work out. So accepting that failure, or that I don't want to say failure, but accepting that you can't do everything is probably one of the toughest life lessons for me. As a student at Lewis, it's hard to explain how much fun I had. It really is, because there's just so many opportunities to do so many things. As a student, as just a college student, and not just in the classroom, but just I don't want to say person, but a college person. There's games to go to, there are clubs, organizations, there's always something going on, impromptu and random. You can join the TV station, the radio station, the newspaper, you can work on stuff with the theater. There's always something to do. And you never have downtime, which is great. And everybody always says, oh, I'm so busy, I'm a college student, but you'll learn as you get older that having something you're involved in with various groups of people in one location is something that's going to be really hard for you to find later, unless you join a book club or the YMCA or a social group of some kind in your neighborhood or your community. You're never going to find the diverse group of people that you have here on campus who are willing to do fun things at a moment's notice. I was involved with the newspaper mostly. I did a couple volunteer things here and there, but they were usually like Saturdays. You would do like a food drive or something like that. But for the most part, it was just the newspaper. I was the layout editor for 2 years, and it takes up more time than you think. I think a lot of people think that we do the newspaper in a week's or bi-weekly span of time, and it really all gets done in about 15 hours from like Thursday evening to Friday morning. And so that took up a lot of time. It was really a great experience to learn how to push yourself. And with newspapers, there's no such thing as I just didn't get it done. Because if you can't get it to the printing press in time, they can't get it printed in time, and then the paper doesn't come out. And that just isn't acceptable. You can't just say, I didn't get it done. You have to get it done. And if that means you stay till 5 o'clock in the morning, then you stay till 5 o'clock in the morning. So learning how to make deadlines no matter what is what I learned working on the newspaper. Probably the biggest life lesson I learned at Lewis is to be inquisitive, ask questions, and be curious about life. Don't just settle for what people tell you. Don't ever just settle for one answer from one media outlet. If one TV station tells you something, double check that with someone else. Go online and check what other people are saying about it, and then form an opinion. You should always just be curious about anything and everything. It doesn't matter what the topic is. You don't have to be curious about politics. You don't have to be curious about world events. You can be curious about cars. You can be curious about arts and crafts. Just always be curious, because we never really grow unless we're trying to learn and do new things. And I think I learned that probably most of my years at Lewis. My advice to students, because I was once a student, is probably close to my answer I just gave. I just ask questions. There's so many faculty and staff members here that are willing to just answer every question you have, no matter what it is. And it's, it could be, can I take a class in, the art department? Will that, help or hurt my GPA? Or I want to take a class on singing, even though I've never sung before. Do you think I could sing? And it doesn't matter. You can ask your, professors in your major, how do you feel about this, and how do you feel about how I would fit in a setting like this? Take advantage of the array of brains that you can pick while you're a student, because again, there's never going to be a situation in your careers and in your life where you're going to be surrounded by so many knowledgeable individuals who are willing to help you. In college, I wish I would have known just how fast it goes. And I know I say that you should join things and do things and there's never any downtime. But the counterpart of not having any downtime is that it goes by unbelievably fast. And I'm not just being nostalgic, like I wish I was still in college. I'm just saying that it really is, you work so hard to get somewhere, and you want to do things, and you want to spend time on campus and hang with your friends and get your work done, and then all of a sudden it's spring and you think, yes, it's summer, and then you start your junior year, and then you start your senior year, and then you're done. And that's it. It's, I shouldn't say like, it's not a regret that it's over really fast. It's just, if you find yourself upset about something or frustrated about your classes or, the typical college annoyances, just remember it's not going to be much longer and you're never going to get that time back. I wanted to be a college professor because in the communications field, it's changing so much and so fast, and the instant gratification that people feel by posting things on social media and the overwhelming repercussions that can come from something that could have been prevented if you just thought about it a minute longer before you posted it is something that I decided I wanted to be a part of, teaching the next generation how to avoid. It used to be that if you came up with something, an opinion, a story idea, regardless, you would go and you'd write out your story outline, you'd interview someone, you'd get your ideas together, your editor would look at it, and then it would go to press. And at any time during those steps, someone could pull the cord on that story. But now, journalists and reporters are given, I don't want to say free reign, but they're allowed to post things directly to newspapers' websites. And yes, you can get fired for doing it, and yes, they'll pull it down after it's been posted, but we all know once it's on there, it's never really gone. And the damage could be done more vast than you could ever imagine. It's running something on TV once or twice and 100,000 people see it. If it goes up on the internet and it ends up going viral, which doesn't take long either, millions of people could see it before you can get rid of it. And to me, like I said, that's something that if you would just reach out to these young journalists and young reporters and explain how delicate the situation is, then maybe we'll find less and less situations where people are ruining their reputations and maybe the reputations of others. The most rewarding part of being a teacher is my students. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but you get those students that really just want to succeed, and they're willing to try really hard, and they're willing to take on any challenge you offer them. And those students are the ones that you just are so grateful to have. And then there's those students who kind of want to be there, who are kind of going through the motions, and those are the ones that really challenge you and make you want to inspire. So whether it's the challenging students or the overachieving students, they're all just the most rewarding part of being a teacher. The biggest life lesson I try to instill in my students is to read. I tell all of my classes, regardless if reading even comes up in the syllabi. I teach a design class, which has absolutely nothing to do with reading, and I tell them to read. Because there's so much to learn from reading, and I know that sounds obvious, but regardless if it's a magazine, a novel, a biography, an autobiography, fiction, nonfiction, it doesn't matter. Just read, because again, you can't continue to grow if you don't bring knowledge into your life. The biggest struggle I face being a teacher is time. And I kind of touched on that a little bit before, but time to really put all your efforts into a solid lesson plan or a solid syllabi, to give each student the extra time that they might need to stay after when class is over. There's really never enough time to do everything, and so sometimes it's incredibly disappointing. Like I said, sometimes you think of a really great idea to use in a class while you're in the mid-semester, and it just won't work out because you can't get it in. The life lesson I learned through teaching is that everything is subjective. Everything in life is subjective. And if you can accept that your students are never really going to fully understand what you're talking about through your eyes, teaching goes so much easier. Because this student understands what you're talking about, but never the same way that this student understands what you're talking about. And they both understand what you're talking about, and they're both going to get an A in the class, but they're never going to get it the way that you get it. And not one answer is better or different than, or I'm sorry, they are all different, but not one is better than the other. And you have to just accept that every mind is different, every imagination is different, and if you can accept that everyone is different and all of life is subjective, then you can reach more students. I am so interested in Harry Potter because for me, the story didn't stop with the books. And I didn't stop with the movies either. And actually, it would probably be better to say the story started after the books finished. It's just a cultural phenomenon that we have never seen before. And it's hard to really put it into perspective unless you actually sit down and kind of look at the statistics and the numbers. But young adult literature was not something that people of my generation did. You just didn't go and sit down and read. That was not something that, it wasn't a movement. You know, we had our books, we had our, I think one of my favorite series was before I started reading Harry Potter. Actually, I can't even remember, but there were some books that you really just wanted to read, and then, but it was like, oh, thanks, Mom, you brought me a book, not, Mom, I need you to take me to the bookstore right now. And that's what Harry Potter did for millions of people across the planet. And never before were people lining up outside of Barnes & Noble waiting for a midnight book selling. Like, that just didn't happen, but it did for Harry Potter many times. The cultural phenomenon behind Harry Potter is what I find most fascinating. The Harry Potter Arts and Ideas event that I am planning answers the question, what is so great about Harry Potter? And I say is because I think it is still present tense and not what was so great about Harry Potter. It was a cultural phenomenon that we've never seen before and will likely never see again, at least not in my lifetime. And I take a look at Harry Potter through the scope of mass communication, and I go over the statistics and overwhelming numbers, like amount of tickets were sold at a midnight showing across the world, box office numbers, the amount of copies of books that were sold, how many times the book had to go to reprint. That says something about how fast a book distributes, is how fast you have to keep copying and going into next editions and next editions. I think when you look at Harry Potter all together like that, it's very easy to see what is so great about the series. The future of the Department of Communications here at Lewis is convergence. And when I say convergence, I mean truly utilizing online journalism with the foundations of traditional journalism. And so the building blocks of traditional journalism, inverted pyramid style, the 5 W's and H, those will never change. Those have been the same since the beginning of newspapers. But to use those skills and be able to put out a 200-word story 50 minutes after it happened is, I think, where the department is heading. That your students and faculty here will see the difference soon. We'll have a lot more breaking news stories on our student website. The student newspaper will have in-depth stories about breaking news stories. So you'll be able to go to thelewisflyer.com and see a breaking news story that just happened here on campus less than an hour ago. And then depending on when the next newspaper comes out, 10 days, a week, doesn't matter, you'll find an in-depth story that explains what all happened and answers the questions that you might have after you read the breaking news story. So it's going to be much more informative and testing the skills of our young journalists, who I'm sure are going to flourish. A lot of the life lessons I have learned in life come from my family. And I talked a little bit about my parents, but one of my grandparents, particularly, all of my grandparents were great. They were very successful individuals in their own way. But my dad's mom is probably the most inspiring person, I think, in anyone's life who's ever met her. And I know that sounds boastful, and I'm her granddaughter, so it's okay. But she married young, right out of high school, because that's what people did in the 50s. And my grandpa immediately went into the service and was gone for years. So she basically ran her household herself, worked a full-time job because someone had to make money, and took care of her 5 kids. And 3 of them were boys a year apart. So you can only imagine what that would be like. I still laugh at the stories she tells about when they were little. But what I really learned from her is that there's nothing that one person can't do. She knows how to do everything from relighting the pilot light in a water heater to making, a 5-course meal in a short time. She used to make 3 meals a day and dessert for after dinner from scratch every single day to feed her kids and her husband when he did come back from the service. But she can change a tire. She can fix the blade on a lawnmower. And she can, I just use your imagination. She knows how to do it because there was no such thing as, looking up a professional on the internet and calling them and they come over within an hour because they have 50 trucks at their disposal. She had to figure out how to do it herself because there was no one else to help her. And she didn't sit and cry about it because that would get her nowhere. She'd have a good cry about it and then still have to fix the problem. So there really is nothing that you can't figure out how to do by yourself. And she's probably the most well-read individual I've ever met too. I mean, every book I've ever read, she's read and read a few times. I think in my whole lifetime I won't read as many books as her. So if there's something you want to take on, if there's a challenge out there, you should never feel discouraged because of your age or because of your gender or because of your position in life. If you don't use your college degree in life, that's not the worst thing. We will want you to use your college degree in life, but if you don't use it, but you're still successful, that's okay. And if you do use it and you become successful, that's great too. And if you find that you're tired of your job in 10 years and you want to try something new, try something new. If it scares you, it's probably worth doing. Thank you for joining me on Lewis Spotlight. I hope you could take something away from my life lessons.